Thank you very much. So first, we're going to hear from these three leaders. And there will be, hopefully, if we manage the time well, an opportunity to put some questions to them. First, we're going to hear from Professor Veronica Campbell. Veronica is a pharmacology graduate of the University of Edinburgh and was awarded her PhD from the University of London. She held several senior leadership roles in Trinity College, including Dean of Graduate Studies and Bursar and Director of Strategic Innovation. She served on the inaugural board of the Atlantic Institute based in Oxford University and was the chair of the Global Brain Health Institute in Trinity College and the University of California, San Francisco, funded by Atlantic Philanthropies. She's a former president of the Royal Academy of Medicine of Ireland, and she was appointed as inaugural president of the South East Technological University in July 2022. Veronica.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here with you today to share my reflections on institutional transformation that we've experienced at South East Technological University, or SETU as we're known, over the past 2 years. I was really delighted to accept today's invitation from the QQI to speak this afternoon because it afforded me an opportunity to pause and to reflect on the past 2.5 years of our new SETU and to consider our journey to date in becoming the university that we envision for our region, one that best reflects the needs of our learners and the substantial expectations of the people of the South East of Ireland. The last 5 years in the technological university sector have been both exciting and challenging. And most of us will never experience major change projects such as this in our careers. And while this might become as a relief to many, certainly to myself, having living this for the last couple of years, I do want to remind us today of the privilege this new sector has afforded us. When in life do we get the opportunity to start something new at a scale such as this, to take the learnings of the past and to build a new entity with new thinking, innovation, and the talent of the day, knowing that what we achieve will benefit the communities that we live in and beyond. And I've no doubt that we're in a position of privilege and, of course, responsibility that comes with all of that. So, for some background, the Technological Universities Act of 2018 provided the underpinning legislation for the establishment of technological universities and the dissolution of the antecedent institutes of technology. And over the following 4 years, a new sector in the Irish higher education landscape was born, the technological university sector, with 5 new technological universities serving the needs of over 100,000 students in Ireland currently, offering a broad range of study from apprenticeships through to PhD level. And within each region, a multi-campus TU was established to address their specific social and economic needs, each with a mission around access to higher education and to collaborate with regional enterprise and industry partners to ensure the continued development of relevant programmes and new thinking to support the economic and social development of the regions. South East Technological University is Ireland's newest technological university, established in May of 2022. And as a multi-campus institution, we have a presence and a campus in Carlow, a campus in Waterford and in Wexford, and a presence in Kilkenny and Wicklow. We've over 18,000 students and a staff count of in and around 1,500. And we represent and are located within a region that has lower than the national average of third-level attainment. As the only university in our region, there are advantages and challenges. An advantage being that we are the only higher education option for those who wish to study in the South East, and the challenge being the weight of expectation on SETU is all the greater, and undoubtedly there is a strong regional impetus for SETU to succeed. I've been in the role as president of SETU for just over 2 years, and now that I've been in the role for that period of time, the full challenge of a TU leadership role is more clearly understood. This challenge is best articulated as a simultaneous management and leadership of the merging of two higher education institutes into a single entity, the transformation associated with delivering on the TU legislation and expectations, and of course the day-to-day operational activities of a large university, making sure that quality assurance and our student experience is the best it can be, and in recent weeks also dealing with a major cyber incident, but thankfully that is all under control. So the challenge of the TU project is magnified by the fact that the two legacy institutes of technology were operating very successfully in their own rights. Having operated as key competitors for almost 50 years, the challenge around the merger was all the greater, and the question why was frequently asked. But put simply, as an entity, SETU will be and is greater than the sum of its parts. The combined resources of the former institutes of technology are more impactful when expertise from all campuses comes together. Our imprint on the region becomes greater and our reach more impactful. The challenge at times has certainly been great, and the first step to face this challenge was to write our first strategic plan, which we've called Connecting for Impact, the roadmap for our future. SETU's first strategic plan was the first endeavour with a shared purpose, a common goal to unite colleagues on all our campuses, to establish the strategic objectives of the new university and what our ultimate vision is for this. And the final result is a data-driven roadmap with specific objectives and the associated actions and enablers clearly outlined and, most importantly, to our governing body also costed. It's ambitious by definition and measurable by design. The other activity that I prioritised early into the role was meeting with stakeholders from across the South East region. And I got to know the nuances of the region very quickly and the key role that SETU needs to play in meeting the skills needs of the region. Coming from what could be described, and what has certainly been described as a Dublin-centric perspective, because I lived in Dublin and worked in Dublin for 27 years, I was really more than impressed by the abundance of industry, the entrepreneurial culture, and the startup communities in the South East region. It was evident that the region has huge potential by virtue of the range and the calibre of companies and FDIs already present. And some of this potential was already tapped into, but there was, and still is, a lot of more possibility. The establishment of SETU provides a pivot point for an ecosystem to connect academia with industry and community through a range of channels, such as informing our curriculum, our work placements to students, and providing our graduates with career opportunities. Research also plays a significant role in our connections with our stakeholders. The co-creation of new knowledge and research that is applicable to the regional enterprise base is charting the development of the South East as an innovation region. We also value our partnerships with the ETBs in support of the unified tertiary system, and I'm delighted that I'm here today with Lindsay, who you'll hear from shortly. The recognition of our shared interdependence has been affirming, and we partner with the ETBs to provide new access routes to higher education to meet the needs of our learners and the skills needs of the region. Given the ambitions of SETU, the building of relationships with collaborative partners in Europe is essential to our success. In 2023, SETU became a full partner and a full member of EU Connexus, the European university that includes 9 universities focused on smart, urban, sustainable coastal development. And this membership has opened numerous mobility and collaboration opportunities for our staff, our students, and our researchers. The coming together of various universities under this one theme allows for us to build our European network with other like-minded institutions focused on meeting global challenges of the day in a sustainable and equitable way, as well as engage with European perspectives on quality assurance and other matters. Earlier this year, we became full members of the European University Association, the EUA, And our membership of this links us to leading European universities and empowers SETU to contribute to important discussions on higher education policies in Europe. And from an international student's perspective, we are keen to build our international reputation around a quality student experience. And for this reason, we are in the process of applying for the newly launched QQI Trusted Ireland Quality Mark, and we heard about that a little earlier on today. And finally, the inset on this slide is a diagram that shows our international connectivity through the lens of research collaboration. So although SETU is a regional university, with strong links to support and develop the region, our international links are also important to bring new knowledge and new approaches and learnings into the region. Central to all of our ambition is the provision of an excellent educational experience for our students so that they can graduate with the key skills and knowledge needed to thrive in the modern workplace. As such, an immediate priority for our new organisation were the structures and putting in place the structures associated with academic affairs. In March of this year, we established a new model for our academic council based on recommendations from a working group that was chaired externally by Ethna Guilfoyle, who will be known to many of you in the room. And features of our academic council include a joint quality committee between our governing body and our academic council, ensuring that the focus on quality is central and connected. The new model of Academic Council also accounts for 10 of the members of the academic staff who are elected to Academic Council on the basis of skills characteristics identified with reference to our strategic objectives and specific legislative requirements. We were also very keen to ensure that the necessary emerging changes to academic delivery would develop in a manner that did not adversely impact students. We now have an overarching quality framework with academic regulations in place. Policy development is ongoing with new policies in place in various areas, and other priority areas for development have been identified. And we have, of course, a policy management framework. And work is also underway on developing a new academic delivery framework. Just last month, SETU went through the Quintia institutional review that was overseen by QQI. And although this exercise took place very early post-establishment of SETU, it was a really important opportunity for us. And it afforded us the opportunity to reflect upon the impact of and the progress on developing our newly established TU and the centrality of quality assurance processes. And overall, I have to say, it was a very positive experience and process that highlighted for us the significant progress that we've made to date, but also provided us with the important objective, external and expert perspective, and that will really help shape our university's plans into the future. Change in higher education is hard, there's no doubt about it, and you all work in higher education, I'm sure you appreciate that. And crucial to the change management associated with creating a new technological university has been a transparent and collaborative process. SETU has developed a framework for change management through people-centred design principles, and that includes a suite of supporting materials such as a bespoke SETU change management toolkit. And our approach to this has been to ensure that experiences of staff are applied to understanding the challenges and creating solutions together, supporting ownership and accountability in outcomes and resulting in an easier transition processes. Once the 5 technological universities were in place, the NTutor project was launched, and we've also heard a little bit about NTutor earlier on today. NTutor is a partnership of the entire technological higher education sector with the objective to transform learning, teaching and assessment by focusing on the student experience and developing the capabilities of staff with students as drivers and partners of the programme. And there are many elements of the NTutor project, but digital transformation is one. And digital transformation in teaching and learning is one of the 6 key themes of the NTutor initiative. And funding has been made available via the HEA, which we're very grateful for, of course, for technology to support this transformation. The technological higher education sector has really benefited from being able to update certain technologies, digital environments and competencies that are fundamental to modern teaching and learning. And as a multi-campus university, technology is, of course, essential to growing a collegiate university culture across our different campus communities. I'd also just flag, given some of the earlier presentations, that within the NTutor National Network, there's a specific body of work associated with generative AI. And within SETU, we fostered an innovative and active Gen AI community within the university. We've established a Gen AI steering committee that reports directly into our academic council, and we're really looking forward to seeing what comes from that over the next while. In the last few seconds, I'll just say, in terms of progress, we announced recently the inclusion of 2 new programmes for SETU, veterinary medicine and pharmacy, and the expansion of our course portfolio offers a wonderful opportunity for SETU to meet the needs of learners, communities and the key industries in our region. And the reaction from the region has been very positive indeed. Undoubtedly, the political adage, a lot done, more to do, is a very fitting description of where we're at today. While we've made progress, there's still a number of conversations around enablers that are currently under appraisal and discussion with government. Very last slide here. I spent some time reflecting on the first 2 years of SETU, the challenges and also the opportunities that technological universities offer and their value to regions generally, with a focus, of course, on SETU and the South East specifically this afternoon. But as we look to the future, I want to bring us back to the core of what we do and why we do it, and that is, of course, our students and our graduates. Our ultimate goal is to offer a transformative learning experience that supports the development of well-rounded, informed, work-ready graduates. SETU's success to date has been based on supporting students to excel. We've been supporting students to excel, we've been supporting innovation, creativity and vision. Of this I have no doubt, but as important as these particular lofty attributes may sound, the inescapable truth is, like any endeavour of scale and importance, hard work, perseverance and most of all belief are the key reasons for our progress to date. Belief in ourselves, belief in our students, belief in our new technological university, and of course, belief in our region. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Next, we will welcome Dr. Lindsay Malone. Lindsay is the Director of Further Education and Training with Waterford and Wexford Education and Training Board and previously held the position of Deputy Head of Faculty of Lifelong Learning at SETU. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Social Studies, a Master of Arts in Teaching and Learning in Further and Higher Education, and a Master of Arts in Child, Youth and Family Studies, and a PhD in Education and Social Justice from Lancaster University. Lindsay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to talk to you for strictly 15 minutes. And thank you, Pádraig and Laura, for your very kind invitation to be here today. So I'm here to speak about FET and to look at what FET is, what FET has achieved, and look ahead to the future of what's to come for FET. And I think today is a really important opportunity to talk about FET because, in my experience, sometimes when someone says at home, I'm going to do a course in higher education, the people at home have a general sense of what that means, and when someone says I'm going to do a FET course, I think the meaning maybe isn't as well known to those around them. So today is a great opportunity to really shine a light on what FET is and the importance of it in our overall tertiary education system. So to do that, I'm just going to give a very quick overview of how FET came to be, so the role of the ETBs, and then look specifically at FET in context by looking at 2023, how many learners were in FET. Then look ahead in terms of our strategic priorities for FET as a sector, and I suppose give an overview of what's been achieved and what's still yet to come. So, as Pádraig alluded to in his opening address, the Education and Training Boards were established in 2013, and that was the bringing together of the training centres from a FÁS perspective and also then further education centres in terms of FE provision, and brought them all under one roof as 16 ETBs that are spread across the country, as you can see there. Within each ETB then, they are led by a chief executive, and then there are 3 directorates. So there are the directors of schools who look after our post-primary and community schools. We have directors of OSD in each of those organisations who look at the overall organisational design and development, and then we have 16 directors of further education and training, of which I am the one for Waterford and Wexford, and our role is to drive forward and to progress the further education and training agenda in our region. So in terms of who a FET learner is, I just wanted to take a moment to shine a light on that and to really put FET in context on a national picture of who the FET learner is. So what we can see here is that there are 218,000 unique FET learners registered across Ireland in 2023. When we look at the breakdown of gender for those learners, 1/3 identified as being male and 2/3 identified as being female. And when we look at the choice in terms of how they engaged in their studies, we can see that 1/3 engaged full-time and 2/3 part-time, and then a very small proportion only online. So that already gives us a snapshot of the breadth of learners that we have across FET and across all our ETBs. Then if we look at the start age of our FET learners when they first register with us, so sometimes there can be a misconception that FET is providing literacy programmes to older people who may have not had an opportunity to progress with their literacy levels earlier in life. And what we can see from this is that's only one proportion of our learners, and that the breadth of the learners that we serve range from those who are under 25, as we can see here, over 60,000 of them last year, then to those in the middle range, and again, there's a good breakdown and spread. And then we look at approximately 50,000 who are age 55 and over. So again, that really shows that FET and the provision of FET is right across the lifespan. And bearing in mind, within the ETB itself, we have our community national schools and our primary schools. So it really is the provision of lifelong learning. Then when we look at the employment status of a FET learner, so again we can see that 1/3 last year were in employment, 1/3 were unemployed, and then another third were categorised as kind of other. So they might be people who've retired, they may be people who are in family caring roles. So there's again a real mixture of people. So sometimes there can be a misconception that FET is the provision of programmes to those who are not employed. But what we can see here last year is that actually the breadth of FET is quite evenly spread amongst those who are employed and not employed. Then we can see a breakdown of the level of programmes. So we mentioned the NQF earlier. So then we can see here that the level of which people engage in the programmes differs. So we can see levels 1 and 2, just under 20,000. But actually the bulk of our provision is in the area of level 5 with 60,000 who would have been registered there last year. If we look then at the ISID codes in terms of the programmes of study, so the areas that people studied in FET, this would be replicated, I imagine, in any higher education institution because there's a breadth of programmes that learners have chosen to do. The one I'll just pick out is the general learning because that equated for half of the learners that were registered last year. And in general learning, that will be people who are developing their literacy skills, their English language skills, and it might be things like yoga, cookery, and other unaccredited programmes. So that's a little bit about what is FET and who is a FET learner. And I hope what you take from that is that FET learners are all around us in this country and no one size fits all to define a FET learner. So then the strategic focus of our work in FET. So there are 2 main things that guide our work. The first is within our own ETBs, we each have our own statement of strategy. So that informs our overall work in our region and that of our organisation, of which FET is a core component of that. But then nationally, we have our own FET strategy, which is coming to a conclusion this year. So that's directed and led out by Solus, our funder. And then each ETB and certainly each director of FET have a role and responsibility to deliver on the strategic objectives as set out in that framework. So to do that, a number of steps have happened. So as I mentioned, in 2013, the ETBs were established. In 2016, the directorates were established. So that was the first introduction of the directors of FET. And then it was looking to the future. What do we want to achieve for FET over the duration of that strategic framework? So we wanted to make sure that we have easier access for people, that we make provision for lifelong learning, and that it becomes accessible. So how do we measure that? We have 6 outcomes that we need to have achieved by the end of this year, and we'll continue to achieve far beyond this year. And that's around the focus on employment and progression opportunities for those in employment. It is around simplifying the offering that we have in FET. It's a focus on lifelong learning, and it's a focus on inclusion. So making sure that learners with ranging abilities, ranging life stories and life experiences have an opportunity to engage or to re-engage in FET across the lifespan. So then, how has FET evolved, which is what we're talking about today, and how education as a sector continues to evolve. So how have we done that? So the first is that we always take stock of what are the mega trends happening all around us. We certainly talk to the whole idea of globalisation and technology and the changes that are constant in that area, but other changes impact our work in FET as well in terms of the economy and in terms of more localised things that happen, because no 2 ETBs are the same, no different than no 2 higher education institutions are the same. So looking at, well, what are the demographics in our region? Where are the black spots in terms of unemployment? Where do we have lower levels of literacy that we would like to support people with? Where do we have higher amounts of people coming into the country and as new communities require support? So we dig down not only at the national megatrends and global megatrends, but also our own region to inform what we do and how we implement that strategy, not only nationally, but regionally in our ETBs. So to do that, we have 3 clear mechanisms to deliver on our strategic priorities and then to measure back on our effectiveness. And that's around skills, it's around inclusion, and it is around pathways. So as part of the FET strategy, they are the 3 core areas that we focused on and will continue to focus on in our provision of FET. So how we do that is, as I mentioned, there's 16 directors of FET across the country, and we don't work in isolation. Though we have our own role and remit in our region, we come together and form a collective, which is the Director of FET Forum. Within that, then, we have 3 strategic groups that are aligned to those strategic areas. I'm the chair of the Inclusion Strategy Group, and then that's occupied by other colleagues across the FET sector, and then there's the same for skills and pathways. But the overarching and additional 4th group that we had to create, which albeit not set out as one of the category areas in the strategy, but what we believed was of core importance to our work, was a quality element. Because we believe that regardless of which of those strategic elements we're focused on, we are absolutely focused on the provision of quality educational programmes for our communities. So they are the 4 guiding principles, if you will, overseen by a director of FET and a co-chair. And so then I now want to look forward in terms of, so we know what the function of an ETB and when they were established. We now know that there's a director of FET in each one of those areas. We know that there's a FET strategy that we are working within, both our own strategy internally and the national FET strategy. We know who the FET learner is in terms of no one size fits all, and really it's the breadth of our society. So now it's looking ahead to see, well, how then are we going to implement those 3 core areas? What are we going to do? What have we done? And what do we continue to expand on moving forward? So I'll take the 3 areas one by one. The first is around building skills, so the skills development piece of the strategy. So what have we done to deliver on that, and what do we continue to do? The first is to serve the employers in our region, so no different than our colleagues in SE2, as Veronica has spoken to. We too need to establish those relationships with industry that are in our regions and our national industries. So we've worked very closely with colleagues around the development of micro-credentials, so that we continue to enable companies in our regions to send their staff into us so that they can upskill and reskill on areas of importance for them in their various industries. Apprenticeship is a key part of what we do in ETBs and certainly in FET. In WWETB, we've done one of the largest provisions of apprenticeships in the country, so we will work with over 1,000 apprentices this year alone, moving them through their phase 2 programmes with us and supporting them on phase 4 and 6. And nationally, we know that we're very strong in this country in craft apprenticeships. So by craft apprenticeships, apprenticeships, I mean the more traditional ones like the electrical, the bricklaying, the carpentry, and then the post-2016 apprenticeships. So we have now evolved to have 77 apprenticeships on offer in this country, and many of those then are outside of those craft apprenticeships and are focused on new ways of learning. And there's a recognition that the ability to work and to learn is a viable option for a lot of people. So we now have apprenticeship routes to support people to do just that. And then it's looking at the FET College of the Future, which was a key significant focus within that FET strategy. So I mentioned that the VECs and the FOSS came together and made the 16 ETBs. So what that doesn't tell you is that there was a huge legacy of training centres to the left and further education centres to the right. And a College of the Future, as a simple concept, was to bring the two together. So we're not FE and there's no little and a T, it's just FET. So we need to bring all of our learners together, regardless of whether that's a learner on a literacy programme, whether that's a learner who's actually in employment and is upskilling, or whether that's an apprentice. They should all be learning in the same environment, in the same college. So in Wexford, through WWETB, we opened the first College of the Future last year. We have over 450 learners there, and when you walk into the canteen, it's special because you see learners who are on literacy programmes, you see learners who may have disabilities, and you see them sitting alongside the apprentices. So it really is the true meaning and a reflection of what FET looks like in practice. The second is around fostering inclusion. So that's making sure that we create open doors for learners to come through, but that they are still included in a meaningful way when they're in. So that's around the creation of a consistent approach to learner supports. We now have that framework in place across the sector, supporting learners who have unmet literacy needs in a strategic way. So there's now a 10-year all strategy, adult literacy for life strategy, that we play a key role in the provision of literacy programmes. And then it's around UDL, which colleagues have spoken to today. So making sure that we approach the creation of our buildings, our programmes, and how our staff deliver with a universal design in mind. And the third area is pathways, and that means pathways into FET. So for learners who maybe are leaving school and want to come in through a PLC, a learner who the mainstream school environment isn't working for them, so they come to us and maybe engage in youth reach. Or maybe it's somebody who's in employment and they want a pathway into FET to upskill. Or maybe it's somebody who's served their time in the employment market and is now retired, which is my own mother's story, who is a FET learner, who is doing a part-time programme because she wants to and she's engaged in her community. And she's thriving at doing that. So again, it's across the lifespan, relevant to where people are at. So that means that there are progression ways into FET, through FET and back to FET. So somebody may well choose to go to SETU to do their degree programme and in 3 years' time finds themselves in employment and decides, I'd like to do an upskilling microcred, I'm going to go to my local ETB and do that. So there's pathways in and through. The other I just want to take the opportunity to say is around the importance of guidance. So there's an adult guidance team available in every ETB, and they're independent guidance counsellors. So WWETB are very proud that we will have the first mobile guidance unit that we're going to launch in early 2025. So we're taking a very simple principle like a mobile library unit, a mobile breast check clinic, but it's mobile information. So we know there are black spots in every region where it's difficult to reach people with the message of what's available. So rather than waiting for people to come to us, we're literally going to put the team on a van, make them mobile, and they'll approach people and bring the information to them. So we're really excited about that in terms of creating a new pathway into FET. So in conclusion, FET Forward. So in order to move forward, sometimes you have to reflect back on where FET have come from, who the FET learner is, what our strategic objectives have been to deliver for FET across the sector. So what I would like to summarise by saying is that, as Danny rightly said, it's about stuff, skills, and it's about soul, and really FET is embedded in all of our communities. So there is a local FET centre everywhere you turn, so we are very much a driving force, not only in economic development, but in social cohesion, which is the soul element. And that FET really, it plays a critical role in terms of how we support learners across the lifespan and at various levels. And so for us to remain relevant, to make sure that we provide programmes that are up to date, relevant, and ensure the future capabilities of our learners, then we need to be data driven, we need to be research informed, and we need to be innovative, which I believe, looking ahead to our next strategic period, FET have absolutely the capacity to do that. So thank you very much.
So I hope you get the sense that there's no post-lunch slump this side of the podium. And can I just remind you that you have an opportunity to pose questions to these amazing leaders on Slido, and we're hoping to have a little time for those questions after the next speaker. So I'd like to introduce Ruth ní Bheoláin. Ruth is the Dean of Academic Affairs in CCT College Dublin, with responsibility for protecting academic standards and the reputation of the college, while ensuring that they maintain its student-centred approach. She's previously led HECA's Academic Quality Enhancement Forum as chair, and has been involved in many sectoral initiatives with bodies such as the National Forum, QQI and NSTEP. She's a chartered work and organisational psychologist and is currently undertaking her education doctorate focused on leadership and evaluation.
Hello everyone, my name is Ruth, thank you for the introduction. And when I received this invitation recently, first I thought, wow, this is great. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful opportunity. And then that was swiftly replaced by panic as what I could possibly have to offer an audience who have collective experience far beyond my own. So when I thought about what I could talk about, rather than speaking to, I suppose, the strategic nature of the private and independent sector and the journey that it's come on, there's people in this room with far more experience and can speak to that far more eloquently than I can. But what I have spent an inordinate amount of time doing over the last several years is thinking about the nature of leadership and what leadership really means in this environment we find ourselves when everything is constantly changing, whether it's AI or other sectors. Developments that are taking the stage at any given time. So what I'm really going to subject you to over the next 13 minutes and 40 seconds, as my timer says here, are really my ruminations on the nature of leadership and what it means to be a leader in the environment as it is, and how we need to distribute that leadership and work collaboratively if we're going to manage the nature of these dynamic changes that we're facing. So these are just a few of the headings that we're going to go through. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who CCT is, just in case you don't know. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the theory of leadership priorities for dynamic change and what leadership approaches I think we need to prioritise in the world at the moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about a model of distributed leadership and how that can help us to operationalise leadership in a tangible way. And then I'm going to apply that model to both a couple of sectoral examples and then local examples in CCT, just to bring us back to that operational level of how do we really make leadership work and embed genuine, authentic change in the world today. So firstly, I'm regretting the size of my font. That's the first thing I'll say. But CCT College Dublin was founded in 2005. So we're 20 years old, nearly, coming up on that anniversary at the moment. We have approximately 1,350 students at any given time. So comparatively to a lot of you, that's quite a small organisation. But I like to think we have quite a substantial footprint nonetheless. We offer specialist programmes in computing and IT up to level 9, and we've been continuously working on expanding our quality framework over the last number of years through our scope of provision, through expanding to blended learning after COVID and our new learnings and that type of thing. So we're constantly thinking about how we can evolve our own practice. Something that's very important to us strategically as an institution is inclusivity. So that's why I'm particularly highlighting our recent recognition as an autism-friendly higher education institute, because it was something that was very, very important to us. We're very proud of it, and I will talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. And we're also a member of the Higher Education Colleges Association, while we also work on a number of other sectoral collaborations and partnerships with industry. And those points are particularly relevant in the context of this presentation when I'm talking about collaborative leadership and how we need to, I suppose, work together to work on the challenges of our time. So when I talk about leadership priorities for dynamic change, what I really think about to begin with is the type of leadership that we need. And this is where you get to see I've spent a lot of time reading about definitions of leadership in the education literature over the last couple of years. Pity none of my lecturers are here to see that. It is actually being used, Joe, I promise. But in terms of the types of leadership that I think we really do need to prioritise, there's several. This is just a snapshot. In terms of educational management, we need people that can actually do the stuff, and that can help to make sure other people are doing the stuff that needs to get done operationally in our institution, whether that's implementing policies, procedures, administrative processes. There is a role fundamental role in education management in and of itself. Then we move on to the slightly loftier types of leadership, the transformational leadership. We need people who can motivate all people in our educational communities to work towards common goals in institutions, to work towards finding solutions, and to engage in, I suppose, change processes and to really get that buy-in. So that's probably where our loftiest type of leadership is. And then when we look at authentic, ethical and inclusive leadership, I suppose I really consider them all part of the one, but it comes back to a lot of the conversations that we've even had today already around building trust and integrity in our communities. I don't think there's any topic more relevant in our time at the moment as being able to lead with trust and transparency and to cultivate that in our educational communities. But even seeing that as a single slide of just 5 types of leadership, I think we could probably all agree that's pretty difficult for one leader in any organisation to try to achieve on their own. So I really think overall what we need to prioritise is distributed leadership. And when I say distributed leadership, I mean really needing to empower individuals with different voices, different levels of seniority, different levels and types of leadership. So not just your senior leadership or a person with a contract that has a formal type of leadership in their role, but people who have an authoritative voice and expertise, whether that is in a discipline area or simply in their role. So part of my expertise at the moment in a senior leadership position is that I'm an emerging leader, I'm a new leader, and that brings its own perspective in comparison to my peers who have a more experienced journey. And all of those perspectives are important and they matter. But it's more than giving a voice, it's about how we actually make sure people have a seat at the table where they can make an impact. And that's where I come to talk about models, because who doesn't love a good model to help us operationalise concepts and bring things from lofty literature into something we can actually do something with. And I'm not going to go through the extreme detail on this slide in detail. I've put some information in the slide deck in general so that if you're interested, you have it easy to hand and some of the resources. What I'm going to do is talk you through this 6E framework in the context of a couple of sectoral examples. But you can see from the outset that what it's really trying to do is show us the different facets of how we can effectively deploy distributed leadership within our organisations and indeed within the sector, and the things that are essential to making that happen, how we engage with different types of leaders, how we enable distributed leadership through our culture and through actually giving people the trust that they need to make decisions and to take action in their areas of expertise, how we enact and encourage, so really how we motivate people, how we make it a priority, how we, I suppose, financially resource it is always going to be part of that, but also how we motivate through reward and recognition, professional development, training, etc. There's all of these facets that feed into our motivation to participate in change and to make it worthwhile, actually working with other people and working towards common goals. And then an additional important elements there are how we actually make sure we're evaluating our progress and how we are engaging in proactive, action-based research. And not so much research as projects, and acting on our opportunity. So to make this a little bit more tangible, I'm going to start by talking about this model in terms of sectoral engagement, and then I'll talk about it a little bit in the local context and how it can be applied within a specific institution. So I'm going to take Nain as an example because that's obviously one of our core topics today, and I personally think it's one of the best examples we have over the last number of years of how distributed leadership can be deployed extremely effectively at a national level, and how we have leveraged and collectively used our knowledge and expertise to benefit the entire sector, which has been, I can say as an individual who didn't work on any of the working groups, I'm very grateful for all of the work that has been done, and it has meant that I can take action in my institution far more quickly and with far more evidence-based authority than I could have had that work not been done by my peers and benefited from that expertise. So this is a view of why I think that has worked so effectively. So to begin with, it involves a lot of different types of leaders. So it involves senior leaders in organisations, but it also involves discipline experts. It involves non-formal leaders within different institutions. There is a blend of different types of leaders bringing their voice and expertise to those groups, and that has been very valuable. And no voice is more important than another in those groups. I think we could all say it is a coming of minds that is equals. It's enabled through a member-led network supported by sectoral facilitation. So really what that means is QQI has provided a space. They've provided buy-in. They have facilitated the space for people to come together, which has made it and helped cultivate it as a national priority. But the work is still being done by institutions, and that has been incredibly useful. And we've seen so many outputs of that working group, which we've seen today, which I don't need to go through today. Part of how that work is enacted in institutions is that every member of NAIN has become an ambassador for that work. So that work continues to feed out and embed into our institutions. There's been so much encouragement for involvement in this network in terms of the professional development opportunities that have been provided, that have been, I suppose, all of these events we see even through the Academic Integrity Week and other times of year. We all have access to those resources, no matter what type of institution that we're in, and that again has been hugely valuable. But then we see that there is that ongoing cycle of reflection and action. So we can see through Sue's presentation earlier today that reflection is currently happening, the data is being gathered, and that is going to inform the next phases of action that are taken. And I think just as a snapshot, I've not told you anything that you didn't already know, but when you see it come together, you can see why each of those elements has been very important to the success of NAIN as an initiative. So that's why we see that sectoral engagement in general is just so important. And I literally just have, a splattering of examples on the screen here of different types of sectoral collaboration. But when we see the impact that a working group like NAIN can have, it goes to show, per somebody's question on the Slido earlier, where else can collaborative working and co-creation have an impact? Anywhere that we decide that it's essential and maybe that we need to move quickly, maybe that will benefit the most from leveraging our collective knowledge to solve those wicked problems that have been referenced earlier. We can apply it in any number of ways. And indeed, from small to large scales, we have seen how this can be done. So within the HECA community, we try to leverage our knowledge on an ongoing basis through working groups and different activities, and do our best to leverage that community of practice that we have within that representative body for the private sector. So I've taken more time already than I thought I did, so I'm going to move swiftly on to one of my other examples here. But to give a couple of examples of how we have, how we're trying to use distributed leadership practices within CCT specifically, I'm going to talk first about academic integrity. And the way we are currently conceptualizing academic integrity in CCT is through using the Swiss cheese model, which is traditionally a health model. It's a risk prevention model. And although it might not be the right thing, it's definitely a motivating factor that we're trying to prevent academic misconduct through a lot of our academic integrity practices. So that can be a useful gauge sometimes. But it's really important to remember that in preventing academic misconduct, we have all of these layers that come first in cultivating our broader culture of integrity, as Irene has spoken about earlier. And again, this is on the slides if you're interested in going back to it at another time. But to put it in that context of the 6E model, why this is working for us in CCT is that this conceptual model shows how everyone does have a piece of ownership in academic integrity, whether it's environmental and you work in admissions or you're an academic working directly with students. A culture of integrity is something that has to be owned by all members of the institution, and we need to find ways to communicate that. Our culture of academic integrity in CCT is very much enabled at a governance level, and it goes the whole way through the institution. And I'm building on the work of my former colleagues in that regard, which I've been very, very lucky to do. But we have a dedicated academic integrity committee. We have that strategic priority that enables that committee to make decisions and to make progress. So the buy-in is there to promote the culture and to enable change at that level. We very much encourage, buy-in on academic integrity and ownership and education through various activities. For example, even from a financial perspective, that we hosted a conference earlier this year that was facilitated by CCT, hosted by CCT, paid for, funded by CCT, because that was where we felt we really needed to take action and wanted to drive conversation that wasn't specifically around artificial intelligence, but around the broader culture of how we promote integrity in our communities. Another example of how we have used distributed leadership is in our equality, diversity and inclusion strategy. And really, again, the same kind of thing where we're seeing we have a strategic priority. This is very much driven at a senior level priority, that buy-in and ownership is there for the development of inclusivity. It's enabled through a culture of trust and respect, very much so. It is a priority for the entire community and something that everyone, I suppose, believes in the importance of, and it's enacted via both structural processes, having a dedicated role, a dedicated office, etc. And again, we see that there is training, there is financial resourcing, there is an ecosystem of encouragements to promote that work along. So if I move to my key takeaways, I think for me the most important thing is that we recognise and never lose sight of the fact that leadership is incredibly complex. We can't do it on our own. We need to include different voices, and we need to empower that voices. And a phrase that I used earlier, which I hadn't used before, but now I quite like, is that there's a difference between having a voice and having an authoritative voice. And it's up to us as leaders to empower those voices to have authority and to give them a proper seat at the table. I think the 6E framework, and I've applied it in a very loose way today, but I think it's a very tangible way to see how we can empower communities with distributed leadership. And I think most importantly, I think it's a key takeaway from anyone's presentation today, is that collaboration within and beyond our individual institutions is what we need to do to keep pace with dynamic change today. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth, Lindsay and Veronica. We have a couple of minutes for questions, and we have some questions that have come in on the Slido system. So I think the first two are probably for yourself, Veronica. If you're not mic'd up, if you want to take the podium.
Yes, so the first question there is around the, So the two institutes of technology, one was slightly smaller than the other, and we've been very intentional about making sure we have equal engagement around the merge process across our campuses, and that is really, really important. So that comes down to representation in academic council, for example. It comes down to when we do an event, we make sure that we do the event on each of our campuses. So we're trying to ensure that we've got equal engagement across our campuses and equal opportunity for staff in those campuses to contribute to the development of SETU. So we're very conscious of that. Somebody's asked about the SETU Change Management Toolkit and if it's available. It's been designed specifically for SETU, but it's also been designed in a way that's very transferable. So there's an amazing lady called Bheoláin, who's part of my office as a senior change management professional. So if you want to reach out to me or to Lynn, then we can certainly share. It would be applicable to any and many organisations.
That sounds great. And there's another one there about merging the different cultures that you might address. I think you've spoken to some extent about keeping the activity on all the different campuses, but this is a question specifically about the different cultures of the different colleges.
Yeah, so SETU is a merger of two institutes of technology that already had a kind of a spread geographically across the region. So I think if you think about the cultures of the two IoTs in particular, look, we're still navigating that, to be perfectly honest. It's been an experiential learning for me personally in this. We've put in place certain things that will encourage collaboration across the campuses as well, so that people can learn about different approaches and different cultures and why things may have evolved in a particular way on one campus or another. So this is an ongoing, it's a very woolly answer, I know, but it's an ongoing process. For me, coming in as an independent person to either predecessor organisation, I would say that staff across those two legacy IoTs have more in common than they have different. And I think what we've been trying to do is help them understand where the commonality is, because there's lots of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a question there about plans for further education and whether there are plans for a further education wing of NAIN. Lindsay, maybe you'd like to
So firstly, I just want to say thanks very much to all of the colleagues who gave excellent presentations on the work of NAIN. So as one mentioned earlier, FET have recently come on board in terms of the existing structure that's there. So I know we had our first meeting recently with colleagues in relation to that. So then how FET further develop through the work of NAIN, I think is yet to be maybe teased out. But in answer to the question, we have recently become involved in the existing structure that's there.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. And we have a question then for Ruth. I hope you understand it better than I do now. It's about equitable sectoral collaboration between institutions of various sizes, structures and so on.
It's a very interesting question. I can see why you made it anonymously, whoever you were. But no, it's a good question because I suppose you've used the term equitable rather than equal, because we're not the same scale in any of our institutions. And when we think about having a seat at the table, often that does mean, you know, a cost per head. It's a person attending a seat for an institution. So when we think about sectoral collaboration, I really think that comes back to our local practices and how we distribute opportunities with that in our institutions. This is one of those particular questions where I think we benefit in smaller organisations that I suppose that the distance between different levels of the organisation is shorter, and it's easier to have knowledge transfer and to involve different people. But I really think that's a question we have to bring to our individual institutions and think who gets the opportunities and how do we equitably distribute them among the leaders in our own organisations.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you'll all join with me in thanking our three wonderful leaders for their frank contributions. Thank you very much.